Hey everybody, welcome in. As usual, it's been a big year and we'll talk more about that too, but every year I do this segment, although I do it in a private life. This year I'm doing it publicly, but last year I made a whole bunch of predictions about crypto market and everything else. And as you guys know, I like to sandbag stuff. And my predictions were extremely conservative, and we have far outdone my price predictions for things like Ethereum, etc. Anyway, we'll talk about what I see for 2022. This will be shocking for some. It'll be entertaining for others. There will be information here that you can use to make money and become financially free and make the world a better place. But there's also a few clouds on the horizon too. So without further ado, let's jump in. And again, designed to be fun, educational. Oh yeah, Happy New Year to everybody. I've been thinking about this for over a month. I assemble my thoughts with a huge amount of rigor and a huge amount of data supporting all my decisions. And I looked at hundreds and hundreds of different topics. These are my top 36. Now, last year, I think when I scorecarded myself, 60% of my predictions came through. And that's a pretty good hit rate. So the question is, will my crystal ball work? So remember, this is edutainment. Please don't make financial decisions without doing your own research. Channel's about math, money, and freedom. And I cannot predict the future, but my crystal ball is pretty good. And it's somewhere around here. Anyway, I think I left it upstairs. So let's jump in. Start at the beginning. Here we go. So first one is, I believe cryptocurrency will change its name to digital assets in the future because the moniker cryptocurrency is very misleading and it also scares people. So I think the whole industry needs to start changing its name fast because cryptocurrencies are not cryptocurrencies. They are digital assets with many different purposes. Prediction number one. Okay. Number two, I'm going to start with the meaty stuff first because I know you guys love that. So here we go. I always said we'd hit 98K Bitcoin during this bull run. I didn't realize it would be so delayed between the China ban and the doldrums for 11 weeks, then a horrible September. December has been pretty sucky. Somehow we just are playing magnet ball with 47,000 since the beginning of the month. We're still exactly at $47,073 now. You can't make this shit up. But here we are. Now, I do believe we will hit that 98K. And sometimes timing can be a little bit off. But I'm still very conservative, very sandbagged. When I look at things like adoption, on-chain metrics, the big money that's coming in Q1, the only way is up. And to double is nothing for Bitcoin. Again, not financial advice, but who knows? I'm just going to put a line in the sand, and that's where I see. Sometime by end of March or June, or if Wales and everybody else continues to keep the lid on things, maybe we'll stay where we are. I don't know, but I have a feeling it's going to pop. So just from the supply and demand metrics alone, it's got to pop. That's my thought. So let's go and see what else we got. Now, next thing, I tend to be very specific and very aggressive with my predictions, but do not take them to the bank. But this is what I believe will happen from all the data points that I have. I believe GBTC will convert to a spot ETF in June 2022. I didn't say by June, I said in June. I'm picking the month. I'm picking the action. I believe Gary Gensler will have to approve this. And there's no way around it, especially with all the flack he's getting for, the futures ETFs and how they are kind of misleading individual investors, and they're not a good investment vehicle to go in by no stretch of the imagination. Remember as well, if this does happen, the current discount on GBTC will go to 0. So if you can buy it at 20% discount, 6 months later, 20% for free, not bad. So that's my second prediction. Third prediction. More treasuries will hold Bitcoin. We saw our demon machine, Michael Saylor. I love the man. He bought another 1,914 Bitcoins today, and he nailed the bottom pretty much. He managed to buy them at about $49,229. So well done, Michael Saylor. They now have 124,000. When I told him about the 14 million max supply, I said, "Are you gunning for 1%? 140,000? He smiled. He didn't say yes or no. He is 15,000 away from that target of having 1% of all the Bitcoin supply, but more treasuries will follow. They're creeping in. We haven't heard about them yet, but a lot more will follow in 2022, especially with this price stability. You know, it's almost not as volatile as it used to be. So that's good news. Now let's talk about Bitcoin dominance. Now this is another prediction that I have. I believe we will hover around 35 to 48% Bitcoin dominance until Bitcoin goes parabolic and until ghost chains are abandoned. I'll talk more about that too later, but that's kind of where I see things going. Typically, the 40% mark is a good level to be at, but it could dip lower as some of the other chains start increasing in value. Think Polkadot, think Chainlink. They are very undervalued right now from where they should be, in my opinion. So let's jump a little bit further. Now, this is an important one. I see this, I call this the crypto bifurcation. Think of two roads that we're going to split down, okay? There's going to be winners and there's going to be losers. And 95% of them will be losers. And the devout armies will give up ghosts and move to protocols that yield value, period. There's people that have been waiting now 6-8 months for things to move. You know, they prod it with a stick and they wait for it to bounce and it's going nowhere. So many of them are going to give up. They're going to prove that these chains are just pipe dreams. They're vaporware. They're never going to be able to compete. They're never going to be fast enough, secure enough, adopted enough, integrated enough, better, as good a UI, etc. And the other ones are running away with the marketplace, and we see that right now. And they're building their own moats. I'm not going to mention any names, but that's what's going to happen. So think of that as a big rotation. Again, the black holes will be the black holes. If you remember my video yesterday, I showed you what the black holes were and how winner takes all in this game, just like every other game. So big thank you as well for all the feedback from that video yesterday. So let's talk about Ethereum 2.0. I believe it will not be fully upgraded till 2023, i.e. it's not going to happen in 2022. I don't believe they're going to get it all done, and it will roll into the following year. Now, this will drive a lot of things like reliance on layer 2s to make it scale and handle all the business that it shares, because Ethereum is the 800-pound gorilla. So much runs on Ethereum, it's unbelievable. Their job now is to help layer 2s, ZK rollups, make it scale. Otherwise, they're going to completely lose market share. And they're already losing a lot of market share. If you look at the TVL stats for Ethereum from the beginning of the year to now, they've lost 35% market share. And that's staggering in 1 year, but that will only continue unless they shore up the problems. So don't pin your hopes to Ethereum 2.0 fully running, but it will become more deflationary next year, which will drive up price action. So that's the Ethereum news. Now, layer 2s like MATIC, I believe they will process more transactions than Ethereum in 2022. Big one there. They're pretty close already, but that's going to happen. So basically, the layer 2s will be carrying all of the weight, all of the processing, all of the transactions of the whole network. And think of Ethereum as just being the settlement layer in the future. So let's jump a bit forward. Let's talk about speed for a second. Big thank you to Sanjay for sending this. And quoting Sam Bankman-Fried here. This guy, I try not to quote myself when I talk about Solana for fear of repercussions, but I'm going to quote him for this one. And again, thank you, Sanjay. Finally, cryptocurrency transactions need to shift gears, i.e. they need to move into high gear. Even 50,000 transactions per second is not enough to satisfy industrial scale applications. Without high speeds, the other problems cannot be solved effectively. Now, in a tweet he commented as well, I always laugh when a blockchain says that it's already fast enough. You know who he's talking about. None is. Fast means millions of transactions per second, and none have arrived. So that's where we are. Now, my prediction for Solana is they're going to get to 100,000 TPS, at least. Remember, FTX and a whole bunch of other stuff now runs on Solana. And maybe Solana will create their own layer 2 internally to get to the scalability of millions of TPS going forward. So I do believe, not a shill boy, I believe Solana's best positioned to be that industrial use case for all crypto as the world moves to the blockchain. So let's talk about a little bit of disappointing news for some people. I got a lot of questions about this from yesterday. I do believe parabolic crypto times are over. This is the bad news for people who are getting in late. The people who are expecting 12,000% returns, 35,000% returns in 2022, it's not going to happen. We might get some doubles, might get a couple of triples. That's as far as it's going to go. So it's just 2021 has been a blisteringly good year. Again, exceeded my expectations, but it's not sustainable. It can't continue. So that's parabolic times. I don't think it's going to continue. Now, what's also going to happen is the dollar hitcoin casinos, can't say the word, are going to collapse. The king or the emperor has no clothes, as they say. And our favorite casinos will collapse and the game is up. They can only stay so high for so long with this infinite supply of tokens. You know, retail investors can only be fooled for so long. They can only wait for returns for so long. And they'll start giving up the ghost of these total-ish coins as we go forward. And that's going to drive them out. And that's going to help keep that Bitcoin dominance up, even as the other top chains grow higher in market capitalization. That's the way I see it. Again, talk about a flight to quality. That's what 2022 will all be about. The retail investors, after losing so much money, will start doing homework. They'll start learning. They'll look at things like tokenomics and inflation rates and start digging into the technology and reading white papers and saying, that's not a good investment after all. So good news for the industry. You need to get rid of this garbage anyway. Now, back to some macro news. Inflation will continue. No doubt about that. We're not going into a deflationary environment. Maybe 6 or 8 months from now, but I don't think so. Now, the governments may cook the books and influence the numbers, the real numbers, that is. But basically, inflation is here to stay. Remember, the trickle down, the money printing has to come back to price purchasing power over time. No ifs, ands, or buts. It's just mathematics. Now, speaking of inflation, it will have some fallout. So I do believe Turkey will implode. That's bad news for all those people in Turkey that have lost their life savings, all of their assets, the purchasing power of the cash, their stock market investments, the ability to buy food and bread. Even bakers can't even make bread because they can't afford the supplies to make the bread, nor can the customers afford to pay for the bread. It is a disaster. And it's not the only disaster. I'm not going to talk about the other countries that are next in line, but more countries are coming that are going to implode. And this will point to the problems of fiat currency. And this will also support the cryptocurrency thesis. Should I say digital assets? Yes. Now, will there be another El Salvador? And I think yes. I think there will be in 2022. I'm not sure which country, but my short list includes places like Paraguay, Panama, Argentina, Venezuela, Mexico, potentially, Malta, and a few others. We'll see what happens. It'll be very interesting to watch this space. But with the success of El Salvador, they had a couple of growing pains, but people now see the value. And there's a lot more behind the scenes that's actually happening that people don't realize, making this really truly a possibility for these countries. Now, the other thing that's happening in parallel with situations like El Salvador is the race is on to deploy central bank digital currencies. Now, I do believe that will drive a lot of demand for Bitcoin and other crypto stores of value. Think Ethereum potentially as a store of value. Now, when you look at this map here, you'll see that CBDCs are being piloted in China and other countries around that neck of the woods. You've got a couple of places that have already deployed central bank digital currencies, like the Bahamas, and a lot more are in the works and coming. Now, who wants authoritarian control of your money and your financial situation? I always like the example of, get a speeding ticket. Before you can go to court, money's taken out of your account. You break a rule, money's taken out of your account. It is very Orwellian, and some people think it's not going to be an issue, like Raoul Paul. I think it's going to be a severe issue. So I think that will drive a truckload of demand for people getting off of the fiat, centrally controlled fiat system, the CBD system, and moving to their own sovereign capability as they go forward. Make sure my collar's not sticking out. Okay, let's see what we got next. Oh, speaking of CBDCs, the digital yuan will be forced upon the populace. Again, it's already happening. The authoritarian government of China will slam down their fist and force the population to use the digital currency, despite protests. But you know what happens if you protest in China? Results aren't good, and they will confiscate your money, especially when they have control of it digitally. So it is very, very scary. We don't need to imagine what's going to happen. We see it already. It's one of the things pretty easy to forecast. So kind of scary times. And China, of course, want to have this in place for the Olympics. If anybody actually goes there, I know there's a number of countries already thinking about boycotting the Olympics. So let's check that out. Now, let's talk about crypto users. This one, I believe we could get up to 3 billion crypto users in the world. It's typically 1 in 7, 1 in 8 people, no matter how you skin it. Now, how could that happen? So I believe we are 3xing right now at this current rate and close to hitting 1 billion users of different crypto. So 300 million. So 3xing from 300 million to 1 billion, I believe, is very possible. And think about the upward pressure on things like Bitcoin as we go forward. Wow, that'll be crazy. Now, coincidentally, sadly, that's also apparently the number of people on Earth that suffer from chronic hunger. So hopefully crypto will make the world a better place, a more equitable place, and people can find ways to feed each other and not just line the pockets of the wealthy. So speaking of hunger, related to that, big thank you to Paul Barron for this slide. Here is a list of countries that are hungry for crypto. USA is number 1, Canada number 2, probably thanks to Jeff Booth and Greg Foss. They're the kings of Bitcoin up there. Singapore number 3, UK, Germany, Ireland, Australia, France, Hong Kong, Sweden, Japan, India, and Mexico all are the next ones in line that are hungry for crypto. Now, the key thing to note about this is some of these countries have huge populations, like Mexico and India. And I know India is trying to find a way to put a lid on crypto, but the demand, you can't stop crypto. That's the beauty of it. You can try block it, you can try kill it, but you can't. The more you ban it, the more popular you make it. So again, that supports my thesis of 1 billion users already real fast as we go forward. So let's talk a bit about regulation and how that impacts the whole space as well. So I do believe regulation will impact crypto in a positive way, allowing more investments. And thanks to champions like Senator Cynthia Lummis, she's planning on introducing a broad crypto bill in 2022. And hopefully that new crypto bill will bring about a better regulatory environment, establish digital asset tax laws, etc., and be able to do things like stop Yellen and Gensler from doing the wrong thing. It'll kind of push through things like the Bitcoin ETF. You'll see here a pattern of this presentation is everything is related. Everything. So the reason we talk about all these other factors is because they impact price, and we care about price. Therefore, we need to know about exactly what's going on here. Now, I might be a little bit optimistic with the politicians here, but fingers crossed, Cynthia, you got this. So let's jump ahead. Tied in to that regulation is this area where I believe stablecoins will get regulated. Again, leaning on Lynn Alden here, she tweeted, stablecoins will become increasingly regulated, only allowed to hold nominal risk-free assets if they connect to regulated legal institutions. Now, the key for this is, the good news is, if US regulators seem open to letting stablecoins exist, as Lynn Alden has pointed out, a regulated stablecoin market would mean basically a huge new infusion of treasury bill-backed liquidity worldwide. And to me, this sounds like a formula for upward pressure on crypto asset prices. It's a good thing. But there's a cloud. This is the cloud, the Tether Timebomb. So, as I've said many times, I'll jump out and talk about this for a sec. Many think this already. Many fear that Tether is a time bomb. I spent a lot of time looking at what would happen if Tether blew up. I believe if it did, the money that's in it would depreciate very fast, but it would be pumped into crypto immediately. So it'll drive crypto up. But the problem is, if Tether is discovered to be one of the biggest scams in financial history ever, not only in crypto, but in the world, it could have a huge impact on the space, on the industry, and it could unleash regulation from hell from regulators. Now, Sam Bankman-Fried has said that FTX has identified at least that 70% of all USDT ever issued is legit. We're just concerned about that 30%. 30% of 70 billion, but $21 billion. The question is that backed somewhere by something hard? I don't think so. Never have. The question is, how big is the fallout? So we'll see. So back to my Tether Timebomb, where there's smoke, there's fire. That's always one thing I've learned in life. The characteristics behind Tether are definitely a little bit shaky, especially the players. Could be one of the biggest scams in financial history. Most transactions in crypto are dominated by this coin. And if it goes bust, there will be no more liquidity in crypto. And markets could be regulated into oblivion. That's kind of the short summary. Now, the silver lining is USDC is growing in popularity. So is Luna, Terra Luna, UST. So fingers crossed, they'll be able to take some of the load as we go forward. But again, Regulation is a big issue for this. Tether is a big issue for this. So we have to watch this very carefully. And now let's talk about the stock market. Now, before I jump into my predictions for the stock market, all bets are off if there is a black swan event like a war. So keep that in mind. I'll talk more about that later. But stock market, it will go up. It'll keep in line with inflation. And my prediction is it won't go up as fast as 2021, but it will add about 909 points to the S&P 500. And my target for 2022 is about 5698. And it's right there on the map. And the beauty is this video will be there forever. So we'll always be able to check my numbers. Now, remember, all bets are off if something really bad happens. But that's where I believe it'll just continue up with some volatility. The next 3 to 6 months will be bumpy in the stock market. But there will also be a big flight to some of the very disruptive stocks that are changing the world, like Tesla, like Google, as we go forward. Now, speaking of a stock that's tied to disruption and tied to Bitcoin is Square, or now called the Block. So here, there's really no need for all small businesses to sit on top of Visa, MasterCard, American Express rails. It's unnecessary, as many people know. And Square have a white paper. It's called TBD. I love that to be decided name division. And it has a protocol for exchanging digital assets in a way that's more accessible to everyone. Their architecture and topology is already being built. It's already being underway. But the thing is, if this does happen, I do believe Square will be a top player in all the stuff they're doing, from mining to payment rail replacement, etc., as they go forward. And Block, TBD, TBDX, whatever, will make bank tasks redundant, and fees will go away or be reduced to zero or very close to it. And traditional payment rails will be disrupted. So if you're bullish on Bitcoin and you're looking for a stock play, it's very beaten down right now. Not financial advice, but I am doubling down on Square. So now let's talk about what the victim of Square success and other DeFi plays will be. One is they're going to get eaten. These companies, Visa, MasterCard, American Express, are going to get eaten. They take sometimes up to 3.5% per transaction. That's not sustainable. If you look at companies like Amazon and they've got to pay 3.5% to these guys, that's going to end. And they're already trying to end it in many places. So watch this space carefully. As Shamath says, he's shorting these guys and he's going long the alternatives. So we'll see what happens. That could be an interesting play. Now, a little bit of NFT news. I believe NFTs will no longer be as explosive. They could fizzle out. Again, there's infinite supply of many of them. They're just everywhere. I think the fad will go away. NFTs will always be there, but the crazy prices and the market manipulation, if you look at some of the big NFT places, the whales hold 70% of the assets, which is a problem. So watch that carefully. Speaking of Metaverse and Metaverse plays, this one is the Facebook Metaverse. I believe it'll be a bit of a failure. I think they were too premature in coming out so fast. And although a lot of people got those motion glasses, AR glasses out there, I've heard tons of reports that make people very sick, very seasick, give them headaches, mess up their eyes, etc. So it's not going to go well. That's my theory. But Apple are launching their own AR glasses in 2023. And when Apple do something, they do it well. So we'll see what happens. But that's the Metaverse news for Meta. We'll see. So inflation, let's talk about this one. Inflation and Cathie and disruption. This is one where, in our view, I won't even read it, but she says, fears of inflation will give way to confusion and fears of recession during the next 3 to 6 months. So this is one of the areas where Cathie Woods and I were not on the same page. We don't always agree. But she always believes in deflation. I always believe in inflation. So far this year, I've been right. Now, I'd love to have a debate with her one day on how we could see how different points. But what she does believe is the fears of inflation will give way to confusion and fears of recession over the next 3 to 6 months. Again, that spells news for a bumpy stock market, if she's right. So buckle in. And remember, she believes it will also be very healthy for disruptive stocks. And if there is a crash, we'll see what happens. So I'm not sure of her logic, but I do trust her. And sometimes the time series, of course, can be off. But that whole world of inflation and deflation and disruptive stocks are all connected. So we'll be watching this very, very carefully as we go forward. But either way, there will be deflation with disruption. But for your everyday products, they will continue to go up in price, especially services. Now, speaking of Tesla, per Elon Musk, I touched on this, I think a week ago or a few days ago. He believes FSD could be a reality in 2022. I personally think maybe 2023 or 2024, but he spoke with big conviction to Lex. Now, if Tesla does nail FSD, it will be a game changer, and the stock should technically be valued at about $4,500 a share, not where it is now at about $1,100. So we'll watch this carefully. Now, even if they don't have it, I do see Tesla hitting $1,500 to $1,800 this year because earnings will be blowout. You've got Berlin going online, you've got Austin going online, and that will just bring about massive rollouts of vehicles in the 7 digits of vehicles with extreme margin, because they can charge whatever they want right now, because for love of their money, you can't buy a Tesla. You got to wait 6 or 8 months. So fingers crossed. Also, the Cybertruck is coming out too. So I know many of you are excited about that. So watch this space carefully. More disruption. Now, speaking of other disruption, we were hoping for a little bit of a genomic revolution this year, but it didn't happen. Kind of fizzled out. Now, it's important for us all to have some type of exposure to DNA sequencing technology, gene editing, CRISPR, therapeutics, agriculture, biology, molecular diagnostics, whatever you want to call it. These innovations will help us restructure healthcare, agriculture, pharmaceuticals, and enhance quality of life. They had a crap year in 2021. Really, really bad. I do believe a lot of that will rebound because it's still so early. Many of these companies are pre-revenue. Therefore, the stocks get battered if anything is off. But it is coming. We just don't know when. So watch that space carefully too. Now, biotech names, another one. If you look at biotech, and this is a very, very key part of the future for us all. Cathie Woods from ARC, her fund, ARC-G, ARC Genomic Fund, is down 40% year to date. But she's still buying high conviction names. She bought Teledoc today and has been buying it since $295. Now she's still layering in at $95. That shows you her conviction. She's dollar cost averaging. She's still buying in. So I know many of you that might be out there holding, just look at what the professionals do, like Cathie. Now, also there's other names like CRISPR. So CRISPR can now analyze 6 billion bits of code, basically your DNA. And gene editing will be coming to the fore and be able to solve complex diseases like diabetes. So this is the reason as well I'm so fascinated by this space, because we can make very ill people better using this technology. So fingers crossed, biotech names, I believe, will recover well in 2022 after a horrible year. Now let's talk about C19, not to get political, but I believe it'll be categorized as a cold. So this era has shown us a decline in public institutional trust, and it's creating tangible problems, complicating our efforts to respond to challenges. Bill Gates came out and he believes that we'll see an effective end to C19 next year, some middle of next year, which is great news. But I don't think it's going away. I think it's just going to be recategorized. And I think maybe things could have been overblown. I know it can be deadly to some people. We just need to understand more about it and go forward from there. So that's extremely positive news as we go forward. Now, the other thing, which is bad news, I believe, being a math channel, we'll be able to calculate the real impact of C19 and lockdowns. You know, there are things that people don't know that are happening. For example, obesity, alcoholism, kids' IQs have dropped by 20 points over the last 20 months, loss of social skills for both children and adults, depression, suicide. So basically the conclusion is the cost of the lockdown far exceeds the alternative. I know that sounds callous and it's a very difficult, tricky debate, but people now realize that a simple stat I heard is the chance of a child under 18 dying from C19 is 1 in a million. And the chance of that same child dying in a car crash is 10 or 50 times higher. Crazy numbers. So that's the issue. And suicide is up 51%, etc. It's just bad, but we'll start being able to calculate the real cost. So be healthy, everybody out there. It has taken its toll. I read an article this morning somewhere that People have gotten used to drinking at home a lot more than they used to. It used to be a weekend thing, going to a pub. Now it's a daily thing at home, drinking at home. So people have to learn to going out and just buying 2 beers or a glass of wine with dinner and cut it off. That's it as we go forward. So watch that space. Now, the other thing related to that is trust in the media falls big time. So from an American perspective, media trust wanes. People watch YouTube videos now more than they watch cable TV news. Folks don't trust them. They've caught them in lies. Outlets, trust in public news outlets are the lowest in the world, and the trend is spiraling down hard. And I believe it's going to hit a breaking point where the media will have to reinvent themselves to gain that trust again. Because everything's moving to different channels. You get more trust, more truth in places like Twitter than you can on TV, which is shocking. So that's going to hit a breaking point next year too. Now, trust in government also, in some places around the world, is failing. So in institutions, in politics, in one another, there's a whole precipitous decline out there. And when social trust collapses, nations fail. So we need to get back on track before it's too late. Now, much of this is being led by the C19 missteps, and I'm sure it's the same in other countries all over the world. Do you trust all the mishandling of what's happened? So people need to fix that. Governments need to fix that, and that's going to hit a breaking point because it's broken. Now, speaking of governments as well, this is a concern that I've had. You've got China, Taiwan, Russia, Ukraine. You heard me hint at it before, but now these little war games are kind of peaking up. I do believe there's probably a 35% chance Russia could invade the Ukraine, probably a 30% chance China could invade Taiwan. So the problem is President Xi and China and Putin are in bed together. China knows, for example, they need semiconductors to succeed in the world and become a dominant global power. They don't have that, but they do in Taiwan. So that makes Taiwan very attractive. Russia needs Ukraine, needs resources, needs land, etc. And then you've got this little cue ball of Lithuania in the mix, and it's a major source of Russia's historical insecurity. And that places it high on the list of neighboring states that Russia would like to control. Now, Lithuania drew China's fury this year for its decision to leave their 17+1 format, and that upset Beijing. And we'll see what happens. But the big question is, can the US control this saber rattling happening and the buddy-buddy between Xi and Putin and how they're trying to play with the world? And this is my biggest concern for 2022. I hope I'm wrong, but something could happen and that could affect the markets. So let's talk about my final topic of the day. Higher education will continue to be disrupted by the internet access, and universities will suffer. So I know a lot of people that are debating whether or not they send their kids to college or just give them $250,000 and 4 years of their life back to build a business or get their education elsewhere or start up a franchise or something else. Everybody's debating that. The opportunity cost of third level education is too high, too many graduates in some places, and something again has to give. Again, another area of disruption. So we could see some universities, third level universities, having problems going forward. In places where education is free, less of an issue. But in places where you got to pay for education, it's becoming very oppressive. And young people being able to take on such debt at a young age is a real problem. So that's it. There are my 36 predictions for what's going to happen. Some very concrete, some a little bit gray, but we'll see what happens. I want to thank everybody as well. This channel began this year, and I look forward to coming back, at the end of this year or end of 2020 to see how they did. And I also want to thank everybody as well. My videos this year have seen 26 million views from zero, which is pretty good, and nearly 400,000 subscribers. So thank you all for being there. With that, I'm going to open up some questions from the audience because we were also told that you guys like to ask questions. So I know we have some here. And I said I'd take 3 or 4 questions. It was probably more than that. Luke Broyles, good to see you, buddy. If the debt tipping point is 77%, didn't the US go bankrupt in the 40s and 50s from World War II? Could an exception to this rule such as this repeat now? Very good question, Luke. So what happened in World War II is the US was able to cut up the pie, And there was a thing called the Potsdam Agreement in Germany after World War II in 1945 in a place called Potsdam. And they agreed to make retributions, i.e. Germany had to pay money back. The total amount at the time, I think, is about $53 billion. But it was given in kind, in resources and building factories and stuff like that and land. So that's how they made retributions. That's how it fixed the problem. Again, very, very different world. And there was much more financial austerity back then than there is today. So, excellent question. A question from James. I'm 34, wife and 2 kids, and I want to sell my house to buy more crypto. We don't have a mortgage, or should I take out a loan? I do hold pristine crypto assets already. No, James, never, don't sell your house. You need your castle, especially with a wife and 2 kids. That is your core asset. Remember, always, always, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Don't ever risk your castle for speculation. It's dangerous. Anything could happen. You'll always have your house. Crypto may not always be there. So don't do that. What you could do, if there was a huge dip and you had a close relationship to your bank and you could borrow a little bit against your house if it's fully paid off, maybe take out a 10-20% mortgage and then speculate with that, as long as you can make the payments and it doesn't affect your standard of living or your family's security. That's what I'd recommend, but never, ever borrow to speculate. Bad news. And remember, if you're on the wrong horse, you can get wiped out entirely. So be careful. From Kevin, how does MicroStrategy buying Bitcoin affect its correlation to Bitcoin? So, good question. So basically, right now, if I pull up the actual arbitration model, hang on a second. I got a December 2022 version just to check the numbers. So currently right now, MicroStrategy is 98.87% intrinsic Bitcoin. The business itself is worth 1.13%. So in terms of the correlation to where we are, they're just better than a Bitcoin ETF at this stage. Like literally, it's crazy undervalued. My floor price from MicroStrategy, and I've said this before, is right now $633, and MicroStrategy is trading at $562. So it's $60 under intrinsic value of where it should be trading. So with that, literally, it is lagging behind Bitcoin right now. Once Bitcoin rebounds, MicroStrategy will rebound. Once the demand for MicroStrategy goes dry, if there's anything like a gamma squeeze on the stock, it'll go parabolic like it did when it hit 1200 earlier this year. So watch it carefully. But again, it's my number one proxy. It has been since November 2020, going back. In fact, my second and third Bitcoin YouTube videos ever were on that. So that's it. And Jerona Love, I need to sell some crypto for a business investment. Which sell? Sol, MATIC, Bitcoin, or ETH? Sol is my biggest. ETH is my least. Well, if you need it for your business, what I would do is think about ratios. Keep your portfolio in the same ratios, like 65% Bitcoin, 35%, say, MATIC Bitcoin or MATIC ETH Sol, and then layer out. If you have crazy gains in Solana, like if you're up, depending on your tax situation, but if you've done a 10x on them, just take your money off the table and then layer back. But I do believe Solana and Ethereum and MATIC will have a good year next year. They have a long way to run as adoption increases. Remember, this is a network effect. The adoption is literally about to go parabolic. We could have 1 billion crypto users next year, by the end of next year. Kiwi Robin, Happy New Year from my IA family. Thank you so much, sir, and thank you so much for supporting the community. Same with Caligula too. Everybody, keep your big boy pants on 2022. Stay well. I predict people who are patient and focused will do fine. Yes. Thank you for that, both Kiwi Robin and Caligula. Really good insights there. The key to this game is patience. I always say, like a sniper in the woods, wait for the opportunities, do a lot of research, and pick the right assets. Pick the ones with a bright future. The timelines of expectations may miss, but overall, we know Tesla's going up. We know Google's going up. We know Bitcoin's going up. We know Ethereum's going up. We know all those names are going up. But there are things out there that are going to tank. So big thank you as well for your donations to Latrolto, Oyster, Jay Simmons, Luna, Peter Wilson, Oyster again, Thornton Plumbing, Ryan Kowecki, A Bottle of Red, Ooh, that would be nice. Airstyle, Bob, St. Jude Needs Us, Black Dog, Thomas Lean, Corn, Mad Jukes. Good night all. Really appreciate all the support. And I'll be back tomorrow for my New Year's Eve special. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. But maybe, I don't know, drop a comment below what you want me to talk about. I'm yours for tomorrow. Okay? So I'll take any comments you want. Drop them in the comments on YouTube below. And I will do it. Thanks all so much.